Okay, I see a record. Like the U.S. mail, no sleep, no rain, or anything is going to prevent us from holding our meeting. So, good evening, Templeton residents. This is your Select Board Chair, Mike Curry. Good evening, Templeton residents. This is. Yep, someone's going to need to go on mute, please. Yeah, I see a record. Yep. If you're not on mute, please go on mute. Thank you. All right. So I'd like to call to order the Select Board Workshop for this evening, October 7th at 18:30 hours. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Quite a storm just came through. I am not using Go right now, as my bandwidth would probably chop up my voice. But doing a quick roll, I can see we've got Adam LaMontagne, Tony DeJoy, Terry Griffiths, got a swipe, Carter Terenzini, Jeff Bennett, Tom Smith, Tim Toth, Deb Wilder, was TCTV. We've got Hannah from TCTV online, Amy and Holly Young. So it looks like the Select does have a quorum. With us this evening is our advisory board. Mr. DeJoy, if you'd like to call your board to the order at this time, I would approve.
Actually, I'll let Mr. Smith do that, as he is the chair.
I'm sorry. I got to catch up with the time. Sorry about that.
No worries. We'll call the meeting of the advisory committee to order at this time.
Great. Thank you very much, Tom. Okay, this evening, we are coming to you live through Zoom. Again, I apologize for being a little bit out of sorts due to the power. If I turned on the video, you'd see me by candlelight. This evening is a workshop. It's we've got some joint discussions with the advisory committee this evening, so they are joining us. Before we go any further, I'd like to have everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, everybody. Just a couple, it's a workshop. We are monitoring, well, I'm not monitoring the live chat right now, but as a public meeting, hopefully someone is watching the live chat for this meeting, as that is the public interaction. This evening, have some presentations and some discussions. There will be no public comment as it's a workshop. Zoom rules of the road. If you could make sure that you're on mute until you have something to say, you can either use the raised hand feature or otherwise, or you can just unmute and just request to break in. Okay, thank you, Adam, for sharing your first item on a discussion related to an amendment to the financial management policies, and that is in relation to the joint Select Board and Advisory Committee policy on the end of year transfers. I believe Select Member Bennett will be leading the discussion. Jeff?
Yes. I've had the opportunity to serve multiple years on both the Board of Selectmen and the Advisory Committee. I've been involved in end of the year financial transfers from both entities. And the thing that seems to pop up a lot is back and forth of either information not getting from one to the other in a timely manner, or information doesn't get put out at all, and it results in a back and forth and sometimes a very timely, lengthy process over many weeks, which should not, it should not be required and should not happen. If you look at Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 33B, these end of the year transfers were allowed originally back in 2006, and there were some percentage limits, and there were also some limits of what you could take money from and not. Health insurance was one fund that you could not transfer money out. Much of that changed with the Municipal Modernization Act in 2016. Still in effect is you can't transfer school funds or municipal light department funds. But the percentage limitations and the funds from which you could transfer have generally gone away. And the law simply states that a town or committee alternative, may transfer money. The selectmen, with the concurrence or agreement of the finance committee or other entity established under Chapter 39, Section 16. And there are the advisory committee, the finance committee, and a warrant committee. 2 months, or May and June of the current fiscal year, or 15 days into the new fiscal year. And you can transfer money from one fund to another fund without spending the money for a special town meeting. Most of the time, it's a timing thing. Could you do it at annual town meeting? Yes, you can. It has been done, but sometimes it's just a timing thing. So I proposed having it either in the financial management policy to have an amendment or an addition that when a transfer requirement or need arises, the person making the request would put it forth through to the administrator, unless it is the administrator, the accountant, whatever department it may be, notify the Board of Selectmen, the advisory committee, schedule a meeting. We'd all get the same advance notice, say, and close of business on Thursday. You would have all the information for the following Wednesday to have the meeting. It would be the fund you're taking money from, the fund the money is going to, the amount, the reason for the transfer. We could have one meeting. We could all hear the same information. We could all get our questions, whatever they may be, out. The town accountant, the department head, the administrator, the selectmen, the advisory committee would all be at one place at one time. There's no need for people to go to multiple meetings. We all know the times have changed. It's hard to get people to go to one meeting, never mind go to two. And I just thought this would simplify the process and make it more efficient. As an example, the town of Montague, and I sent this link out for joint meeting minutes as an example to the advisory committee. I sent it to the Board of Selectmen to show that it is done in at least one other community. And I really only care about Templeton, but just as an example, I thought I would share that. One town, Arlington, actually has it built into their bylaws of how end of the year transfers will be done. It doesn't specify a joint meeting, but it says who can request it and who has the say in the transfer. And again, it's covered in Mass General Law that the selectmen It comes from the selectmen, it goes to the advisory and finance committee, and if they agree, then it happens. And it saves the cost of having a special town meeting if, you know, that if the timing thing occurs. So that was my thought, and I asked to have, or I suggested that we have this joint meeting to hear the input from the advisory committee, because I don't want this just to be a you know, from like a top down, like this is how it's going to be. It's just, I brought the subject up, the suggestion. I want to hear from, you know, everybody, have their input and see if we're in agreement on this. At least in the approach, you know, maybe there'd be details we hammer out at a later date, but at least to see if both sides, both board committees are favorable with it.
Right. Thanks, Jeff. Hey, Jeff, on the screen right now is a draft policy. Adam, I'm to understand that based on the memo that you've ginned this up.
That is correct. I
Is that correct, Adam?
drafted this up. Could you hear me?
Yes.
I can.
I drafted this policy up after the board requested that I do some research, put everything together. I believe Select Board Member Bennett covered all the points. I mean, another thing that this makes it also easier for the department head, I believe that was mentioned at the advisory committee meeting as well, where they come out one time and all the information shared between the Select Board and the advisory committee. And this could be just placed within the financial management policy. And I think having the dialogue tonight is the right place to get the input from both bodies. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Adam. Jeff, if you've had time to review this draft policy, do you think I would like some tweaks in how the wording is, but does this meet the spirit of what you were looking for?
I think the concept is good. Maybe it needs, you know, depending on input from various members of the select board and advisory, you know, if there's any tweaking and wordsmithing or anything. But I think to the point that it, you know, it makes the point that if there's a need for end of the year transfer, and this is generally just to tidy up the current year's budget, you know, to make things work, to be able to cover things. Budgeting is hard enough, you know. So again, I think it addresses it. I just would like to hear from other members and see what they think about it.
Right. I just want to, it's basically like everyone remarks on a painting, you know, as the architects on our side, I wanted to make sure that what was on the canvas was in the spirit of what you were looking for. I agree with you, wordsmithing wise and just cleaning up language. We can achieve that. So having said that, let me throw this back over to Tom and the advisory committee for comment. What are your, Tom, what you know, feel free, this is a workshop. What do you think and what does your committee think of the process? And then if you've had a chance to review this draft policy, what are your thoughts on the spirit of this policy? Over.
Well, thank you, Mike, and definitely thank you, Jeff, on putting this together. We did talk about this fairly at length at our last meeting. We haven't seen the exact draft policy that we have here in front of us, but we did talk about, and we had a lot of discussion on how it makes it a lot easier. One of our complaints this past spring was to have that we didn't get the same information at the same time. And what this does is, one, it makes it easier on the department head, and having been one and still being one, I think that's important. It also, they bring the same information with the same request to both boards that have to make a decision on their request. The only thing that we had believe the only thing we had a question on, was we did feel once it came to voting to approve the request that we wanted to make sure that the advisory committee still remained their anonymity on the making their decision and the Board of Selectmen making their decision on the transfers. I think it's very important, and I think it's on a lot of items going forward, the two boards should work together in getting the information, because that way we all get the same information, and we know how easy it is to one day you get one info, the next day you get the next info, a little different, same intent. I think our only, unless I'm misunderstood our last meeting, our biggest concern was to make sure that we still had separate opinions and had separate voting decisions, and didn't feel that one board, whether it was the Board of Selectmen influencing advisory influencing Board of Selectmen. I think we got two boards with, strong will. I don't think that would happen. However, the concern was there. I do believe that, moving forward, this is a good idea, in my opinion, my personal opinion, because we make sure that we get the same info. And that's the end of the day, getting the same thing. We should end up being at the same decision, I would think, most of the time, just because unless something's really crazy, the department heads, they do a good job. And when they come forward with a request, there's usually a strong justification as to why.
Right. Tom, I had a question for you. So Jeff had sent, we're using Montague. Jeff had the town of Montague as an example of a joint board. I've reviewed the way that it occurs. It's a public meeting. It's got a process. It has a form that it's followed. The one that he used as an example had many transfers. I don't typically remember a flood of transfers occurring, but I do agree with you in the respect of having their information at the same time and possibly lightening the workload, whether it be the financial staff or the town administrator, or I'm sorry, the department head staff. The one thing that I had the question that you mentioned was preserve anonymity. I don't understand what you're saying there. I mean, you'd have a public vote, you'd have a tally of select board and advisory, like in the Montague item. So I'm not sure why you would want to preserve anonymity, if I heard you correctly.
I might have used the wrong word. I apologize. By that, I mean that each board, and I know specifically here in Templeton, the advisory committee is supposed to overlook the finances and be a very independent board. We can't even be a member of the town golf committee if there was one and still be on the advisory committee. We have to be strictly only on advisories. That's more what I meant by the separate boards. That way if we vote separately, it's still a separate vote. I 100% agree with that.
I agree. Yeah. Did you have a chance to see, I'm referring to examples that Jeff had shared with us about Montague's system. Quite literally their forms. Have you had a chance to see that?
I did have a chance to review that. Yes, I did. And the only thing I did not review was I didn't look to see how their bylaws allowed their committees to be on various and still be at the same time. I did review the policies a little bit.
Okay.
I guess
So Mike, Tom.
Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah. So I think what we're really trying to get at is if there comes up an issue that maybe the boards don't necessarily agree, we want the ability to be able to say, we're not voting on this right now. We wanted to discuss it separately as a board to make our decision. And so I think the word Tom's looking for is autonomy. Thank you, Amy. And that's really, for the most part, we all normally agree on the transfers and And Jeff's suggestion of doing it this way is a great way to speed the process up. But every now and then there is one that we may not agree on, and that we just want to retain the ability to say, okay, thanks for the information. We're not ready to vote on that tonight. We want to take it in discuss it separately as a board. It would be at an open meeting, but it would just be with our board and no one else.
Mhm.
Again, Mike, I'd like
Okay,
to point out that I think that will be on normal transfers. I think realistically, and since I've been on, we really haven't had any that we were earth-shatteringly opposite where it came to the Board of Selectmen approved it, the Select Board, and we did not. We're not in favor of it. I think
yeah,
I think we can really take what Selectman Bennett's put together, which is fantastic, and go forward with making it a kind of a combined thing between Montague's and make it Templeton's. Like he said,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what Montague or it doesn't matter what Fitchburg or any of these towns say. We're doing what's best for Templeton. If it works to get all the information at the same time, make some adjustments, make sure the department heads bring the information to us, I think that we really have the opportunity to work together as two boards or a board and a committee that are, it's very important. I mean, we're two very different boards, but at the same time, we have the same strong interest, which is how the financials benefit in Templeton. So I think that it's very easy to say, okay, we're just going to do it all at once. But occasionally there may be that odd, look, we need to meet in, and advisory can adjust too. Just because we have a regularly scheduled meeting, if there's a transfer that is questionable and needs to be addressed, we can still call it an emergency meeting, and we could do it sooner than later. And I think that's, in the past, I'm, being fairly new, I don't know exactly how it's been, but I think we have the ability certainly to work with you and with the select board and make sure that both boards stay their own course, but work together on it.
right. I think that we get speed out of it, whether, I'd like, on the subject of speed and process, whether Adam or Carter would have any thoughts on that. I did have actually a follow-up question for Jeff. So the reason why, we just talked about the number, as an example, Montague scenario, you had a lot of transfers. I'm scrolling through several pages of transfers when we typically might not even have more than you can count on one hand. Jeff, do you happen to know what Montague's budget process is? That would, are they a level funded? Is there a reason why Montague would have that process where they would wind up having the necessity to have that much discussion about budget transfers at the end of the fiscal year? Over.
I did not dig that deep into the reason why they would have some that, or have that many. There was another joint meeting. It was in 17 where they only did a few. The last year, I think that Templeton did, an enormous amount was, I believe in 2016, there were, I think 62 or 64 end of the year transfers. A good number of them done at town meeting, on town meeting floor, and a good number that came from the select board, from the selectmen to the advisory committee. Since that time, we have really weaned ourselves off of the need for that many financial transfers. It's just, and again, this is my initial thought is not to be a top down, this is how it's going to be. It's just so the information gets put out and everybody hears the same thing at the same time. So advisory gets it, won't get it and then go, well, we need this document. Okay.
Right.
The accountant's not here. Okay. When's our next meeting? No, I can't meet next week because I'm out of town at work. My schedule doesn't, so it'll be 2 weeks. So they send the question back, then they get that question answered, and then, well, how much is in there now? Because now we're into a new month, and has the balance changed? So they ask that question, and just try to rid ourselves of that hassle. Everybody hears the same thing at the same time. Advisory says, you know, we really we're not quite sure on this transfer. Well, then they can go off on their own to their own meeting, but at least they will go with the same information that everybody has.
Exactly. That's what we want.
So it won't be, this
Yeah.
back and forth thing, because it gets frustrating. Sometimes dang, it would be nice if somebody was here, or if we had this or this, or, and that was really my thought. It's not to say, this is how hey, advisory, you're going to do it this way. It's more like we all get together and we all get the same information. We get the questions, hopefully all asked and answered at the same time. And then if they need to go off, and discuss it, then they do. And if not, it gets done that night.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Carter, you have your hand up.
The number of year-end transfers is generally driven by how tightly a town has budgeted and how many different accounts that it has. So the more towns that have an account for propane, an account for kerosene, an account for heating fuel, an account for diesel, an account for gasoline. So we have moved to a department level line of control. That's the control that we use. So this year, I believe we had 3 transfers at the end of the year. So when you have some free cash on hand and you can backfill accounts at the annual town meeting, and then you generally should be down to 2 or 3 if that transfers at the end of the year. The financial management policy is actually a document of the select board. So I do see 3 things that I think could be done with the draft that would accommodate both recognizing the fact that it's the select board's financial management policy, but also what I'm hearing from the advisory committee tonight. The first would be to, instead of having the chair of the select board schedule a joint meeting, because you really can't schedule the advisory committee without their approval and consent, would be to invite them to a joint meeting. Make sure that the material is sent out jointly at the same time, and then provide for the board of the selectmen to take their vote first. I know that one of the years there was a bit of a dust up, was, sort of the who went first, the chicken and egg. Did it have to be the selectmen first? Could it be the advisory committee first? So the policy could provide that the select board would vote first. And then to Tony's point, it could say something along the lines, and upon the vote of the select board, the advisory committee, if it is prepared to vote at this time, would be requested to vote. And so you're recognizing that maybe the advisory committee wants to go back later. So I think that if this is something the advisory committee likes, the idea of the joint meeting, getting information all at the same time, the draft could be touched up just a bit to address everyone's concerns, if that makes sense. So you'd have an invite, the material would go out as opposed to scheduling a board that's not under the select board's control. You'd have the material going out at the same time, and you'd have the select board voting first, which addresses the question of who does go first. The statute doesn't really require one to go first or the other. And then you'd have the advisory committee voting, should it be ready at that time, which I think addresses Tony's point. And it retains the independence, because it is a separate standalone vote. It retains the independence and the autonomy that Tom Smith spoke of. So I put that out there for everyone's consideration.
Thank you. Any more thoughts on the proposed change to the financial management policy. Again, Adam, thank you for taking that to task and give us the canvas to work on.
Mike, I just have one quick question.
As we do in workshops. Yep, please.
I just want to make sure that since Selectman Bennett put this forward, are you in favor of how we want to put this forward as far as having everything at the same time, but still the two boards being able to, you've been on both boards, so make sure each board is being able to have their vote, I guess, what I'm asking.
Yes, it's, again.
Yeah, the way.
I don't want to, this isn't an attempt to a top-down saying, hey, the selectmen are running this and telling you what to do. Because the roles could maybe reversed in the future. I may end up back on the advisory or vice versa, or some member of the Board of Selectmen can end up, or somebody on the advisory committee now could end up on the Board of Selectmen. Or, you know, things change over the years. It was just, my intent really was to get the two entities together and just get the information at the same time. If a decision can be made that night, fine. If there's a question, a concern, and rightly so, there should be sometimes, then, okay, you have all the information that you need, all your questions are answered, then, okay, you're gonna meet tomorrow, you're gonna meet Tuesday, and have your vote. But again, my intent was not to, you know, have a hammered type of thing. It was just so everybody gets the same information and gets a chance to hear the questions and ask them at one place. So people don't have to go to 2 or 3 meetings, hopefully.
I think it's a great idea, Jeff.
Certainly any other member of the advisory board, if you want to chime in on this, I know we've all talked about it, thought about it, and been very pro and con on it. So if you have any other input, I think Jeff, Selectman Bennett.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for putting this together. I think it's a great idea, and it resolves a problem that we feel like we have, and it's not getting the same information, and so it makes our decisions harder. This way, we'll all get the same information.
Terry, you had something?
Excuse me, Yeah, my chime in would be, if we're all getting the same information at the same time, and again, that word autonomy, what if we had questions and we needed to, you know, meet separately? I like the idea, and I'm grateful to Chairman Bennett, and I just was wondering about that, as far as if we're getting the information at the same time and we had questions, would we be able to break out?
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah, the intent of budget transfers is to have the right people in the room at the right time. So answering questions or otherwise, basically, the way that I take it is if the committee needed further deliberation time, that they would have the opportunity to do that. It's not a question of information, because that's what we're trying to fix right now, is that we're getting the right information at the right time with everybody in the room. Having some efficiency in government, and like Jeff said, save us a few meetings. So it's not a question of getting data, it's who's getting it when.
And it's not in replacement of town meeting or to overrule town meeting, as Adam put in the policy. But as Carter mentioned as well, we had only 3 this year. So, you know, just for the public that's watching, you know, it's not, and not to, you know, to give them confidence that we're going to be organized, and this is a small bit of transfers, not, you know, a whole lot that should go to town meeting.
Right. Well, as Carter was just saying, and that's the reason why I asked Jeff what type of budget, and what we know what type of government we want to use. It's the type of budget lends itself to being a little bit more efficient. Like our financial management team already has some efficiencies by that don't break down the accounts such the way that that Carter was describing. This is an administrative thing to be able to say, here is the tweaks that we need to do to the budget, and that by bylaw and law, we're able to do this more efficiently than we've been doing it in the past. So like I was about to say, when Tom chimed in, typically in workshops, we don't vote, but we do give an indication as we're kind of soliciting for us. We do give an indication to say that there is concurrence on this subject. So unless there was more discussion, I would just want to make sure that everybody basically, at least on the select board side, says, gives their indication by thumbs up or saying something that this is the way that the direction that we would wish to go. Yeah, I saw Terry. I only have four pages phone. I can swipe left or right to see other people, but I did see Terry's thumbs up. Let's see, and I now see Tim. Tim, are you good?
I'm good. I think this streamlines a process and it makes a lot of sense.
I'm fine with that.
Thank you, Julie.
Can
I know Jeff's in favor of it. How about the advisory board? If lots of thumbs ups.
I agree.
Thanks, Amy.
Yes.
All right, thanks, Deb. I'm the mad swiper right now. I'm swiping left and right.
Can I ask one more question? Should we put a cap on
course.
how many items that we need? Like, it says done not as a replacement for town meeting.
3 items total.
Should there be a cap? Should there be a cap?
Why do you want a cap, Terry?
Well, because it isn't as a replacement for town meeting.
Gary, I think that language covers it
That's a completely different process.
at the end of the draft policy. But what I'm going to do is, since it seems Mr. Chairman, it might get to speak.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
What I'll do, because I see consensus from the select board and the advisory committee, and I will make those changes that were suggested and come put it together and have it ready for the select board meeting, business meeting. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Adam.
And we appreciate that too, Adam. At this point, I think when we look forward, we're discussing it now in October, which is great because we're actually moving this forward early. Adjustments we make are very easily adjusted by you, and we're bringing this forward with the ability to tweak it, make little changes, meet as boards, and moving together as a town. It's great, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep, go ahead, Jeff.
I would just suggest or offer a thought that when it comes before the Board of Selectmen for a vote, and say it passes, if we would forward it to the advisory committee so they could discuss it and they could have a formal vote rather than just a concurrence here tonight. I think that would show, well, the public would get to see it again and hear their thoughts, and they would get to kick it, or the advisory committee would get to kick it around a little bit more, and maybe they come back and have a little tweak or a suggestion or something. But it would just be, the select board could vote on it. We would hand it off to the advisory committee and they could discuss and then have their formal vote on it. So there would be 2 public meetings with 2 official votes on it. It would be the way to go, I think.
I can do
Yeah, I
that.
agree. And the AC, the AC has, governing principles as well. They may choose to adopt the same style language for their own purposes. So there's fidelity all around. But I agree with that. That's very good.
Chairman Curry, if I may.
Okay. Yep, please go ahead, Tom.
I agree with Jeff. I think maybe on the advisory level, we can agree to at our next meeting, talk about having, if there's a financial transfer that came before us, both boards with information, then once the board makes their vote, 48 hours later, we make ours. We have the ability to adjust our meetings, and we have our ability at that time of the fiscal year to realize that some things are important. So maybe we can, at that point, adjust things also. I mean, I think as a board, as a committee, we're more than willing to work together with the select board. And I think either way, we're going to be able to, within a 7-day period, there shouldn't be a department head that put their request forward that can't have it approved and say, okay, you need to run your department. And that's what's, at the end of the day, these department heads are making their best effort to do what's best for the town, and we need to work with them as best we can if possible.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, anything else on the proposed change to the financial management policy? And Tom, that's the only thing that you guys had with us this evening.
I believe
Is that
so.
true?
Looked at the agenda quickly, and obviously there's a few other things that interest us, but I think that's all that we required a joint board meeting.
I think,
Okay.
I'm not sure if
Carter, you
yeah, there we go.
We are going to do a brief overview of the warrant. I don't know if the advisory committee might want to stay on in case they individually had questions on that. Give them a good head start before we're able to get signatures on that document and get that over to them. I leave that to the members, but I would.
I agree. I absolutely think. I think that they could stay. I was just merely thinking of the formality of that. Basically, they're in session as well. That they can basically stay in session, is what you're saying, Carter?
Yes. If they wish to.
Okay.
I have no issue with that.
Then
How the other board members feel, but I'm more than willing to continue working because I think these two boards need to keep working together.
Okay, let's move on in the agenda. The next item is action to take thereto concerning the fall town warrant approval. And I am not able to share the.
You want me to share this?
Yeah, if you could do that, Adam.
Okay, I'm gonna pull
I
this
have
up.
the printed copy, but it's going to be slightly different.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I got it up. People see it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Carter, can you see? Carter, you're gonna go through this, right? So could
Yep.
you see it?
Yeah, I can. I'll tell you when to keep going, please.
Okay,
So we have, hold please. So we have 12 articles at this point. We had one addition and we've had 2 minor changes in the drafts that we've been circulating out. The first one, Article 1, is those pesky late bills. That has gone up about $10 from the drafts we've been circulating. There was a $10 bill found by a new clerk who just started in a department that came in yesterday. That will require 9/10 vote. The voters information guide will have a deeper explanation of what those are all about. And Tom, we hope to have that voter information guide out to the advisory committee within a week or so. Article 2, you may recall that there were some elements of the consent agenda at the annual town meeting that one voter asked that we hold over, and the board consented to that, no pun intended. So it's the reports of town officers, the reports of town committees, and was there a third element, Adam, if you can keep scrolling, please? Yep, those were the 2 elements from the annual town meeting. Due to COVID, the printed documents had not been available around town, so the voter wanted some additional time to review that. Article 3, in putting together the debt exclusion one, we had included additional interest to pay down the ban on the school. DOR, we did this last year. DOR didn't care for it. You may recall we had to do that minor amendment. And so we've have this article to reduce the debt budget by this $131,000. The net effect on the budget is nil because the budget goes down and the amount of monies raised, debt exclusion goes down as well. And that makes the DE1 balance out with what our actual payments will be. Happy to answer any questions on these. I don't know if you want to wait till the end or you want to ask article by article. Mr. Chairman, not sure what the board's pleasure is.
I'm sorry, Carl, cut out for a second. Could you say that again?
My question is whether the board or the members want to ask questions at each article, or they want me to go through all of them. And then if there's any questions, we'll go back to that article.
It says they come.
I'll keep going then, and if there's any questions, we'll come back to them. Adam, if you would scroll up Article 4, please. So you may recall,
Back.
took 2 years now. We have been working on collapsing, and I can't remember if it's 8 or 7 smaller minor trust funds. One was, there was, I think, 5 trust funds related to the support of indigent, needy, worthy poor. Those were collapsed into one to provide fuel and heating assistance for people. The other one, there were 3 trust funds, as I recall it, to support the arts in various ways. That has been collapsed into one. And the Attorney General approved all these. We've sent information out. The trustees for these 2 funds are the Select Board under the Attorney General's approval. So we need to strike these several funds that no longer exist because they have been merged under authority of the Attorney General's office. Article 5. So this one has had a addition today. I'll let the chairman speak to that. The first is, I don't know if you saw it in the Gardner News in the last day or 2 or 3, very large ad on tax title, the liens. That advertisement, to give you some sense of what it costs, was close to $5,000. In addition, anyone who does not pay, and we have to put a lien on, that now costs about $105, $110 to record those liens at the Registry of Deeds. So the $10,000 we've been putting into the operating budget really doesn't keep pace whatsoever. So last year we appropriated, I think it was $15,000, and we're asking for $17,500 this year to try to keep making progress on this, these tax title accounts. The second is the Narragansett Regional School District is creating a regional agreement amendment committee, RAC. I believe that Tim Toth is the Select Board's chairman on that, representative on that. I think it may be Amy Guthrie from the advisory committee. We're looking for 2 citizens to be appointed on Wednesday night. That will require legal advice to the town of Templeton outside of legal advice that might be provided to the district. Our interests may be separate and distinct from the district collectively or from Phillipston's. So this is used for counsel and consulting services so that Tim, Amy, and the town's representatives have access access to the kind of expertise that they might need to call upon during that review. You may recall from the administrative report of 2 weeks ago, we had 2 winter vehicles, 2 6 wheels, one who had several major repairs way too early at the front of the year. So we're looking to do those without killing the rest of the budget at this point in the season. And I'm going to let the chairman speak to the addition that he has asked you to consider here this evening. Mike, are you available to speak to ClearGov?
We must have lost him.
Yeah. Hopefully he'll be able to get back in shortly, and we'll circle back to this one as soon as he does. Adam, if you can keep going. Okay, we're going to show a spreadsheet at the end of this review. This is every fall. We have a formula of how we look at the free cash, and we apportion it out, and then based upon the remainder that's in the financial management policy. And we'll tell you what the deposits when we get that spreadsheet are up. But these are the fall contributions to the operating or the OPEX stabilization, the capital or the CAPEX stabilization, and the OPEB reserve for the town. Article 7, Stone Bridge, August of 18, failed, had a major blockage. It has continued to collapse. We have received 2 appropriations to do an initial concept study. Then there was one that we're working on now to get to preliminary design, and we filed a grant application for the Division of Ecological Restoration for a culvert removal. The first phase is about $50,000. We got $25,000 from the state to do the design and construction oversight, and the CPC has agreed to support this first phase. The second phase, which would involve the kayak and canoe launches, the parking spaces, the pedestrian pass, and the pedestrian bridge, would be about $175,000, give or take. And we'll continue to look for grant funds, volunteer labor, and the like to complete the full build out. This goes to the Conservation Commission for permitting within the next week or so. Article 8, we have, we started with 10 tax deeded properties. One of them was on a hold to combine with some others. If we can get those tax titles cleaned up, makes a better assemblage. These 2 are parcels that we want to retain permanently for town use. One's a very small piece. It sits within, actually, kind of is wrapped by O'Gara, strike that, Gilman Waite. And the second one is actually a roadway, Elm Street. So we want to have this vote so that it's clear they're being retained for town purposes, and we've devised a way to note this in town's records so that hopefully we don't have the same problem we had in Article 9. Article 9, the select board authorized up for sale 7 parcels. We did subsequently find out that parcel number 3 had actually had a town meeting vote a number of years ago to be retained for conservation purposes. So this one will be struck through at the time of the motion being offered. It's being retained within this because of the reference to the document entitled Sale of Tax Deeded Lands. These parcel numbers refer to that offering document. So if we try to renumber them here in the warrant article, nothing will match up. We got bids on 5 parcels, raising, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere in the neighborhood of $35,000. Is my
Roughly.
Unfortunately, we did not get a sale on parcel 7 Pleasant Street. So Lori Weed has gone back to the drawing board, and that's the burnt out structure. We're gonna go back to the drawing board and try to sort out how we can dispose of that, short of having to demolish the structure ourselves. That demolition would probably be in the $50,000 plus or minus range. But we do have 5 of these, and we're asking town meeting to give the board authority to now sell them.
Mr. Tetrazzini,
Yes.
on parcel 3, it's not going to go forward at all
No,
on the floor, or is it going to be up for a vote?
right, that'll be struck in the motion, Tom. We'll double line that the way we do the motions as of late. But if we removed it, first off, the select board offered these 7 for sale. I didn't feel that I could just change the selectmen's vote, giving us that authority. But more importantly, if you look down at the language below it, all of these documents are numbered exactly, all these parcels are numbered exactly this way in this document entitled Sale of Tax Deeded Lands. So if we tried to renumber them or remove them, we just thought it would look a little bit askew. So in the end, we decided the best thing to do was simply to make sure in the motion that it was not offered for sale. And the voters information guide will explain how this happened.
Okay, thank you. Just a question I had.
Yep. And the last 3, the board had said that in the interest of shortening the annual town meeting, it would hold over the 3 citizens petitions that were on that warrant, and you can see they have kept their word to the annual town meeting. So I'm happy to answer any questions on these articles. Otherwise, I would ask Adam to pull up the spreadsheet. Why don't you wait just a moment, Adam, to see if there are any additional questions beyond what Mr. Smith, and it has, can we tell if Mike's been able to get back to us, Deb? Can we? I can't see.
I'm pretty sure there's a copy. Yeah, I can see it's just a bad connection. I'm still out of power, but I can hear you.
Mike, do you think you have enough signal to address the ClearGov that you've asked for up there in Article? Was that in Article 3, maybe, Adam? Nope, there it is.
Article 5.
5. It doesn't appear that Mike's going to be able to give a explanation here with continuing signal problems. So I'll ask him to address that to the board on the 14th and to the advisory committee. ClearGov is a service which analyzes a wide variety of data using Department of Revenue databases, and then compares Templeton, the initial to provide greater, I think Mike would say, transparency in government, and to show people how Templeton compares to other communities. The first year is around $7,500 to get it up and running. And then there is an annual maintenance fee of roughly the same amount after that. Mike's much more familiar with it and passionate about it. And so unless there's any real questions, I would request that we leave it part of the warrant, and then Mike can address it between now and the.
I'm back. I called in. Sorry to be the technology challenged one this evening. Coming in at a good point to describe the ClearGov.
You're coming at a great point to take me off the hook of explaining ClearGov. Yes, I just said you were the one
Okay.
that was passionate about it and could do the best job of why you asked for this to be on there.
Yep. So ClearGov has come in and given 2 presentations to the town, to at least 2, if not 3 different boards. What ClearGov is, they have a host of products. Core, the cheapest product that they have is about updating transparency. It's publicly available information. You know, it's not work hours out of our own staff. It's a company that basically does the data mining for us and provides transparency through the ClearGov website, which basically dovetails into our own website, that offers financial information, demographic information. Just consider the almost 9,000 residents that we have and the data needs that they may have. We know that we have some squeaky wheels within the community. No, you know, I won't call them squeaky wheels. They're very concerned citizens about processes, financial data, and otherwise. This helps get them more information, not stale information as it exists right now. You can look up Templeton information on ClearGov's website, but it's not going to be a premium service for transparency. But just think about the rest of the citizens. You may have kids doing school projects where they want to get demographic information about their community, or how many kids might go to their school or otherwise. A whole host of information that the community wants. And quite frankly, this puts it in a nice package that we don't have to, it's a fire and forget. You can basically ask them, you pay them the transparency fee, and you can see what it would cost in the figure there. And that allows us to be able to use that as a tool. The community gets to use that as a tool. And it's a gift that the community gives itself to say, we want to know more about, we want a better interface about more information about our community. Are there any questions about it? I know that we've talked about it at our workshop and otherwise. This is the first instance where I'd like to be able to take advantage of the that we have for fall town meeting to get this service going. Frankly, we should have been offering this service years ago. I'd like to be able to get this for our community.
Mike, is it in
That's all I
addition
have.
to, is it in addition to the beautiful web page we're developing?
It is. It's in addition to. ClearGov has, if you go to their website and look at Templeton's data, it's got data in there, but I think the best characterization is it's stale data. Their website is designed to complement our website. They have plugins. They're able to make their data available on our website. But even if they didn't, it would be a link to the existing data that's already there on ClearGov. I think it's even as simple as www.cleargov.org/Templeton MA, something like that. If you Google it, you're going to find it. So it integrates, but it doesn't integrate in an intrusive way that makes work for our staff.
Would it be something that we could put as a link on our already beautiful designed website?
Yeah, yeah, that's what it's designed for.
Is there a model? I know I sat in on the presentation, so go on and look at it, but is there a model that they could send us to see what kinds of information? I mean, I can see the value of it, knowing, you know, the median income of people, the amount of tax, you know, what type of taxes, and there's all kinds of questions because we do comparison, like Adam's been really great at getting comparisons of surrounding towns. So is that some of the information too that would be available?
Yeah, they would do that. There's many communities in Massachusetts that take advantage of this service. I know that Louis Alfano, the contact that I have over at ClearGov, they have a whole list of communities that they have in the town, but they also have comparable communities that are comparable to what we look like that are using the service and what and how it can help. I'm not looking to have them come in and try and sell it again. I'm basically saying I put it within our workshop, and even more than that, I want to jumpstart this and get it on the fall town meeting so that we can get this service fielded and running to our citizens, our residents. For the money, I think we get a great service. I think that we wind up having something that is usable by, if you go on the website, if you look at the data that we have right now, it's presented in such a way that kids in school can access it, and then some of the most fiscal-minded in town are going to find this service useful as it taps several databases for analysis.
Mike, will
And that's all I had.
be the same going forward for every year, or is it kind of various?
It is. The figure that we're talking about now has some startup cost, or I think it's about $1,000 of that is startup cost, but it's a sustaining amount of money each year to maintain the service. So it's a comparable figure each year. That's why I had brought it up during our budget, our retreat, where we basically do our goal setting to say, this is something that I want to be able to sustain within the community. Forward, even in lean times, there are other ways to fund it. In the past, used to do that. There's several funding streams within the state that the state offers that can supplement operating funds. Yes, a sustainment for this program would come out of operating funds each year out of the, I believe it would be the select board accounts. But there are also ways to offset as well. Again, for the cost that it presents, I think it's well worth it.
I'm on the site. It says budgeting. There's a budgeting, ClearGov budgets, digital budget book. What is that about?
So that is an enhanced service. I'm asking that we put transparency, so our data is collected and put out there. They have other products where they can assist. They do a little bit more with the website. They offer budgeting. They offer some tools that I think that we're not. It's not that we're not ready for. I think that we're not resourced to be able to handle it. And quite frankly, I'm very proud of the budget process that we have right now. So I look at it from their bottom tier offering is the transparency, which I think winds up being a good product for this community. I think it's about another $10,000 to $15,000 for that additional budgeting option, Terry.
Okay, going forward at town meeting, would this be like a line item vote? Like they could, it's a motion to vote all those things in, but it would be, so we'd have to vote on all.
That's a great question. I'm asking that it be included in there. It would come out of free cash. It's less than $10,000, so it's not a capital expense. So it is a line item right now. But as I said during the workshop, not our workshop, I'm sorry, our retreat, I think it should be an item that we offer the community, and therefore it would be part of the budgeting process every year. We run a zero budget, where we start with all of our requirements, and then we get to an omnibus at the end, where we wind up voting in each department rather than the eaches. This would be embedded within the select board cost.
Thank you.
Yep. onto the spreadsheet.
Carter, do you,
Yeah,
Mike?
let's, if Mike's all set on describing ClearGov, and I think what we'll do is we'll send out a few communities to folks in their website so you can see who uses them. So what we wanted to show you here, I'm going to ask Adam to scroll up to this because this follows exactly the financial management policy. So we start with our free cash, and bear in mind that we show you gross free cash for this exercise. And then in the budget book, we show you what we call normal and ordinary, because there are items that are extraordinary that would not be the norm. We then subtract any monies used at the fall town meeting. In this exercise, the budget proposes to use roughly $57,500 at the fall town meeting. We then subtract what we anticipate using in the spring. These are just anticipated at this point in time. 160,000 for the snow and ice deficit. Normally we have some budgets we need to backfill. And then a reserve at this point of $625,000 for capital projects, and that might become 640 650 as we get closer to the annual town meeting. And sometimes those special articles like the MS4, that kind of thing. So that leaves us with $410,000 roughly of free cash for which there is no planned use at this point in time. We then take that 410,038 and we divide it in half. For working capital, we use 35% as a target to be contributed to the Operations Stabilization Fund. We use 10% to be contributed to the Capital Stabilization Fund. And we use 5% to contribute to the OPEB reserve. Those are then rounded. In this case, 142,500 into the Operations Stabilization, 40,000 into the Capital Stabilization, 20,000 into the OPEB. So based upon the September 30 balances, if these contributions are approved by the fall town meeting as requested, your balance on or about October 30 is going to be in the neighborhood of $855,000 for your Operations Stabilization. That was in the neighborhood of $75,000 in the summer of 2016. Nearly an 11-fold increase. You'll have about 215,000 in your Capital Stabilization. That was in the neighborhood, as I recall it, and Jeff may have a better handle on this, of around 15,000 in the summer of 16. And you'll have a little over $200,000, 207,500 in your OPEB stabilization. And none of these are overpowering, but they are all substantial increases, a 12-fold increase over what you had in the summer of 16. Who knows what the oncoming economic challenges will bring, but if you stay on target, you will build towards what your needs are. And so that's exactly how that works. It's a straight math formula, and we would have 207,000 of working capital that actually rolls into the coming fiscal year. That's the formula. That's what's in the financial management policy, and those are the balances, which all told, as I say, is a roughly 12-fold increase over 4 years ago. So I thought you'd like to see how that works on the spreadsheet. Happy to answer any questions, but Mike, that's all that I have on the fall town meeting. Unless there are concerns, omissions, additions, or corrections, we would ask the board to get into the offices and sign that warrant tomorrow morning so we can get it out to the constable.
I have a quick question. May I please? You
Yep,
said
go ahead, please, Terry.
it's getting us toward our needs. Like we're not at our needs, but it's moving toward our needs. We're doing great, and I appreciate the work and the increase, but we're not there yet. Is that what you said?
Oh, Lordy, no. You should have, as you get closer, you'll want to fine tune this. But depending upon the community, Concord, New Hampshire tries to run 30% of its operating budget in stabilization funds. Some will speak in terms of 8%. Some will speak in terms of the last community I managed was 12%. So let's just split it down the middle, call it 10%. You have a general fund budget, let's call it 9 million, and two school budgets of roughly 7.25 million. So let's call it 16 million. If you use a 10% set aside, you should have 1.6 in your operation stabilization fund at a 10% reserve rate. Your capital, that's the number you're going to have to deal with. There has been no target set for that at this point in time. But you just built a $38 million school and a $2.5 million police station. And you have a number of other municipal buildings. Tom's got a new building there. Tom, how old's your fire station up there in Winchendon? The addition that went in. You're on mute.
About 35 years, and we're looking forward to hopefully in the next few years building something at about 12 million.
I mean, it's amazing. You build a new building and you turn around and it was 20 years ago, and it looks like it happens overnight. These things all have roofs, spoilers, very sophisticated HVAC systems these days. You know, you see the price of the new 10-wheel trucks, 6-wheel trucks. So I think it's an exercise the community really truly needs to go through and decide what its target should be. On the OPEB, I can't even remember what the liability is. It's in the $5 million plus or minus range. But it's a plan. It's working. I think to be able to increase your reserves 12-fold in 4 years, with steady progress each year, when Worcester Regional Retirement starts to flatten out, if you take the excess that should be freed up, that delta, and put that towards the OPEB as well, there's another funding source. It's substantial progress, but please don't lose sight of how far you have yet to go.
Thank you.
So Mike, unless there's any errors, omissions, or deletions to the warrant, and I'm not hearing any, we would ask the
Yeah,
board.
I'm not hearing any questions either. So we're looking for a motion to approve, correct?
Yes, to approve the warrant as presented.
Yep.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Who was that, you, Tim?
Yes, it was, sir.
Okay. All right. I have a motion by Julie. Sorry, I'm on the phone. I got to wind up asking, and it's seconded by Tim. Are there any further questions or concern about the fall town meeting warrant as presented? Hearing none on the motion to approve the fall town meeting warrant as presented, how do you vote, Tim?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
And Tom, we'll get you, inked signatures once we have those in the next few days, but I suspect it'll be next Tuesday or Wednesday before we can get those over to you. And hopefully we can have the voters information guide out for next Thursday, that kind of reduced to writing the explanations I've just given here verbally tonight.
If I could also just add, for the members, the select board members, to come in by 10:30-ish tomorrow and sign.
Roger that. Thank you, Adam. Okay, thank you. Again, I offer, we've got 2 other items on the agenda tonight. Tom, if you're more than welcome for you and your committee to stay.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, we'll move on. Okay. Moving on in the agenda, we have a discussion related to 4 Elm Street project.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep, please go ahead.
The board some time ago had me work on this when the discussion about the Vets Park and moving that location and finishing this up. After research and then attending the CPC meeting, they would be happy as long as we move forward with the intent of the 2015, if I remember correctly, article which was passed by town meeting to have conservation and open space at 4 Elm Street. So as you can see on your screen, we sent out a survey, or that's on our webpage, and you could already see, at least by the time this packet was put together, that we had 95 responses. And right as of that time, River's Edge Conservation Area had the most people go in favor of the blue section on your screen that you can see. And then the other choices were Back Bay Conservation Area, Baldwinville Conservation Area, and then there was other. The great thing is the people in town are participating. They're engaged in the process, and this is certainly something that is a project that we can, as a community, come together. And I will be attending the Conservation Commission meeting for a recommendation from them before I go back to the CPC with a plan and a design that also, in my due diligence period, I did go and look through, and the notice of intent is still on file for about roughly another year or so to get moving with this project. So I just wanted to give an update. Right now at 4 Elm Street project, there's still $37,667.64 in that account when I went through the BBA that Kelly sent out today. So that's the latest number. This is the project, and anybody has any questions of me, I'll be more than happy to answer. But I certainly believe this is something that can be turned into a beautiful area. And I thank the board for moving me forward and giving me that obligation to follow through and get this project going. That was the will of town meeting back in 2015. And I'm thankful for that.
Okay, thank you very much, Adam. Hey, we've got Holly on. Holly, were there any write-in responses to that survey?
I'm not sure what you mean. There was no option. Oh, you mean
okay, no
you mean
option.
other options? Got you. So there were 17.
To be honest, I guess I'm offering a little bit of levity or some humor, but I really did have my money on Bucketboro Riviera.
There were some very cute ones in there. I'd have to pull up the results in the Excel spreadsheet to show you.
Yeah.
I'll have to do that and email it to everyone.
I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I'll do that.
But I'm glad you got the response that you did. I think that's fantastic that that you took the time to, and the diligence to track that. But thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Also, Jeff had offered, I think it was November, correct me if I'm wrong, November 9, 2015, when we voted on this before, or was it 2015 or 2005?
It was 2015. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. So it would have been 2015.
Okay. So like Adam said, staying in the original intent for 4 Elm Street. Any other discussion on 4 Elm Street tonight?
just the remaining money in the budget, is that something, how does that get spent? What's the procedure for that?
Since it's already been appropriated, CPC's fine with that money being allocated as towards the project, as long as we keep it open space conservation area. And I really want to get a recommendation from the Conservation Commission to get their input in this process. I also want to thank like a few folks in town, like Sheila Pelletier, has volunteered her time putting together some design. She's helping me with the design of it and the estimate, which I should have in time for the Conservation Commission meeting. And Scott Dill too, and Bob Sozik. They've been helpful through this process as well.
Great. Okay, any further discussion on 4M? All right, good discussion. Thank you for the update and the work on that. Let's move on to the next agenda item. We have a discussion related to reopening of town offices. Adam had sent some information based on our architect or otherwise, but Adam, if you could frame this discussion for us.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, let me just try to get this up on my screen so everybody can see it. I believe I sent it out to the select board, but that way the advisory committee can see as well. Give me a moment here. Okay. The board discussed the reopening and plan. And what I did is, the architect that we've been working with has been extremely busy, and I got him to come out, and I wanted to send this earlier, but as you can see, I literally received this today, and he sent the letter in regards to the accessible public walk-up counters with cough protection at Templeton Town Hall. I want everybody to be aware, this is a topic of discussion with many town administrators. Carter knows, being in Grafton, other communities, I would say many are open right now by appointment only. Now, granted, there's other towns that are doing it limited openings for hours wise, maybe a couple hours. There's others, some that are open, and there's some that are closed. So we can't say for certain. There's one plan that I would say most are open by appointment to get things done. We had this discussion with department heads on opening or limited openings. Carter was working with Bob Sozik and Lori Weeda, our Board of Health team, to come up with a plan. And we do have the cough guards up at the town hall. We do take the precautions, and whenever we get a call, we meet with people outside of town hall, and we have a little area there where people aren't sitting out in the sun. So we're trying to make it as comfortable as we can for folks when they're coming to town hall. The letter I have up here is if we were to get the windows, if you will, like similar to the treasurer collector's office. Right now, Carter, Bob Sozik, they did a great job, and they took care of that office where the staff there can feel safe and certainly do their job, and at the same time not worry about the COVID. I mean, we're always worried about the COVID, don't get me wrong, they're taking their precautions, but at least they have that barrier up to protect them from any kind of air or the like that could occur. Now, the other offices, like you'll see in Lori Weeda's office, and I'm not sure if you want me to read the letter. I'm sure many of you already have, but these are some of the challenges we're faced with, and we're looking at cutting into the wall where we can have an opening similar to the treasure collectors, and we're trying to make it look where it's the same on both ends. So in the assessor's office, you would have one window for the town clerk. You would have one window for, the assessor, because there are two offices. You would have one window for the assessor, one window for the town clerk. The other side, you would have 2 windows as well, whether it be you're there for a permit, and let's say 2 people go up there for a permit, they could be served that way with 1 person at each, with obviously putting in the proper social distancing. We're trying to do whatever we can. Bob, the architect, came down. He looked at the project. He's going to need some more time to put together specifications on how he's going to put this together, and on a sketch plan, and have the specifications that I can include if we're going to move forward into a bid package, if you will, depending on the threshold of the cost. He put in there the specifications ready for issuance in 6 weeks, and I was thankful to actually get him out there. I mean, he's been tied up with so much work lately, and that's the latest I have. Also, Mr. Castle sent a report as well, indicating his concern on moving to any in-person meetings. He requests us to continue to delay any in-person meetings because he's still working on his tech end. So we're really trying to do what best we can to keep our department heads, our staff, the public, all safe. And we want to do this in a very thoughtful, diligent way, taking all the necessary precautions. And at the same time, when we do open or move to opening, we could possibly phase it out in a way that's safe for all involved. And that's what I have so far, and I will continually update the board. I'm not sure if Carter wants to add anything. I know he was involved with the earlier aspects, and he took care of the other treasure collector and some of the early voting issues that we worked out.
Is it all reimbursable?
Thank you for the rundown, Adam. But I would say to the other members of the board, based on all of the health reports and intel, news reports, guidelines, and everything else, I think that it's good that we're preparing for it. But I think that given the level of service we've been able to maintain, I think that we need to stay the course. And it may be still presumptuous to come up with a timeline to when we may do construction, and I think we need to proceed with that. But in terms of, as we have it on this, on the agenda, the reopening of town offices, I think we need to stay the course for how we're doing operations right now. Over.
Is it all reimbursable?
Right now, I have a phone call into Rich Curtis. Obviously, before we do any type of work or going out to anything, we will be making sure that we cover all those bases. Because Rich Curtis has been handling, for the most part, our CARES reimbursements, or FEMA.
Yeah, and the way that I think that's working right now is that we get a lot of CARES money back. That's the way that they designed it, that we would wind up getting more than what we've asked for. I mean, the town was approved for in the area of about $700,000. Now, we didn't get $700,000, but that's what our approval was first targeted as. And our approach was, let's try and get whatever we can, because there are so many unknowns. We didn't know what the price tag was going to be. We were having these discussions 3 months into the pandemic, not knowing that it was going to last as long as it did. I mean, we had indications, but certainly not as scalable as it occurred. So CARES money-wise is still going to be, it's not a this for that, Terry. It's not, hey, we have a bill, is it going to get reimbursed? We already have a pretty good tab based on the CARES application process to begin with. It's really managing it smartly at that point. Over.
If I could also add too, I did mention that there's also, Holly's been working with Bob Sozik and going back and forth with the architect on the selectmen's or the select board's office. essentially what it will mirror the treasurer collector's office. On that as well, I wanted to mention that. So it's construction is a lot of work. Just making sure you get the right specifications, but making sure you do it right. And it's going to require some time. And we hear of increased cases, and I really would like to see, I want to gauge and watch what's going on with other towns and how they're approaching it. And I also would like to do I believe Select Board Member Griffiths mentioned the look at our other communities. What are they doing? I would like to poll them, have an update for you at your next workshop, perhaps, and just so you could see what they're doing. And I think that will be also helpful. This is certainly a difficult time. I commend anybody in any leadership role with COVID, and we're still focused on continuing the operations of town government, and even though it's not like it used to be, but I do want to do it right, and that's the most important part for me. But I also want to keep the board informed and throughout the whole process.
No, Adam, I agree with you. I think it's very important to keep track of funding, the pandemic itself, what our approach is. I appreciate that, but for our discussion on the select board side, I think it's also it's a good thing to be able to talk through all of these different issues, especially with I'm trying to think of what way to characterize it. Basically, the necessity to return to normal operations, to basically we use the town and we use the town's the taxpayers' money to work services and otherwise, and there's expectation. So there's basically when do we what we are expecting that we paid for. I think that's a central argument, and that's really where I think that we're the most effective in talking through those issues. But we have to be able to see all aspects of it. So thank you again for being able to give us a picture of that. Any other select board members have any thoughts or discussion items for the reopening of town hall or town offices?
I do have a question. Is there, and I recall one weekly warrant item for the little plexiglass shields that are at all the counters. I know there was, I think it was 3 or 4 pieces for, it was 400 and something bucks. But is there Adam, do you have available what has been spent so far on all those plexiglass shields at all the counters in town hall?
I can get that information for you. I believe originally, if I remember correctly, Holly, if you could jump in here, if you remember, but I believe for Carol Harris for her election, the town meeting and or the elections, and she needed those to protect her workers. Holly, do you remember if you recall that?
I believe Carol Harris bought hers for the town meeting with the office in mind to use them after. And I think that was out of her account. I know Development Services bought some out of their account. So I think everyone's kind of done it out of their account, and Buildings and Grounds probably did some. I think they did some at the library as well. So you might want to check with Kelly on.
I believe you're right. I think, but it was a COVID expense to their department budget, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it should be.
But I could get you more specific numbers on that, Select Board Member Bennett.
Are the fixtures permanent? Are they going to be permanent?
Sorry,
Are they going to be permanent alterations to the building?
These would be. with the service windows, and I think this would actually be beneficial because people they really won't even have to walk into the offices. And there's a very tight area, especially in Lori's office. You're really when you go right in there, you're literally 4 feet away, I would say, roughly, from Rhonda when you open the door. It's tight confines, and I think the service windows will be.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, further convert this old school into, more workable and usable town offices. You walk into another constructed building for town offices, they would have already had those considerations. This has been an opportune time for us to actually make these permanent modifications.
What about the type of glass? I mean, this may sound far-fetched, but what about bulletproof?
Mr. Chairman?
A question about making them bulletproof? I don't see that as a specification for this. It's not a high cash operation. You could add all kinds of extra things to it. In this case, I don't think that's the specifications for what we're going for the town offices. If you're aware of a town office that has bulletproof customer relation areas, I think you could bring that back to the board and say, see, I think we should go and pay for that.
And my concern is, oh, sorry.
It's not, what we're trying to achieve here is public health from an infectious disease perspective, not a crime or violence. But I understand what you're saying. Adam, go ahead.
I was just also going to just kind of piggyback off what you just said. Also, I would be concerned whether if the cost is more, whether that would be covered. I would have to do more research on that.
Bulletproof glass is very expensive.
So I mean,
Adam, please don't put more time into that.
I think Polly had something to say.
I did. I just wanted to say that I'm not sure if the plan is for both. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
I'm not sure if there was a plan in it for bulletproof glass, but I think that is actually a valid concern. Doesn't happen often, but you do hear of situations where that can happen. I'm not sure what the difference in cost would be, but Terry, I think that's a really good point.
Okay.
Is there any other questions?
You could wind up asking that question for force protection reasons. You can ask that question, but
I intended to. I will speak with Rich Curtis.
Okay. What else? We've heard from Terry, Jeff, Tim, or Julie. Do you have any questions or concerns about the reopening of town offices?
I have none.
Okay, thank you, Julie.
I think given the current situation and watching the stoplight map that we keep seeing every week coming out from the governor's briefings, erring on the side of caution is our best option at the moment.
I would agree, Tim. Okay, any further discussion on the town offices? Adam, you take that down to basically have that discussion with the architect about adding some force protection, some at least having the discussion to see what the realm of possibility is, especially within cost.
Yeah, and the difference in cost, I will do that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, that brings us to the end of our workshop agenda. We did have the possibility of having a needed executive session this evening, but in light of the technical requirements for doing that and reviewing any of the proposed documents, I'm going to wind up suggesting that we do not have the executive session that planned for this evening. And I can basically proceed with any items that we would have been dealing with in that big authorization. So that would bring us to the to adjournment. Are there any select board members in opposition of not having a executive session this evening? Does anyone require one? Okay, hearing none, we'll forego the executive session. I thank you for that. Sharing about 5 different candles and an oil lamp. I will entertain a motion to adjourn the workshop.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, the motion to adjourn has passed, and we are adjourning at 8:19 p.m. Our next meeting is next Wednesday for a business meeting, October 14th. I hope everyone stays safe. Be careful out there. A lot of trees down. My wife came in during this meeting. She said that Hubbardson Road and Cross Road, there are quite a few Templeton Light and Water or light department vehicles out trying to restore power. So stay safe out there. Please read the town reports. Lots of information. The assessors, treasurer collector had a lot of information this week to find interesting about where they are within their processes and otherwise. And having said that, we are adjourned. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Mike out.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.